Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Conversations, the place where we have conversations about the things I think we should be having more conversations about. And today, I'm really excited to be having a conversation about women in leadership. So, before you run away, if you are a gentleman who has joined us today, this is a conversation for everybody. There's lots of different perspectives. It's always good to know what other people are thinking, other people who are different than you are experiencing. So please stay. We still find your input and your thoughts and your conversation pieces very impactful and challenging, perhaps for challenging our perspectives as well. So we welcome you. Please stay. um, there, there's so many things that so many different directions we can go today. And so, what I want to remind you all is that we are all here to be part of the conversation together. So, if you're joining us live or if you're joining us on a replay, please share your thoughts, insights, questions, whatever you have. Hey, Glenda, welcome. We're so glad to have you with us today. Share your perspectives because this is a conversation for everybody. And the more perspectives we can get around the table, the more we can all learn from each other. And this is what conversations are for. And I'm very excited to have my friend Prerika here to have this conversation with me today because very first time we met Prerika, we got into it about women in leadership, not in a like aggressive fighty way, but in a like, there's so much to explore here. And so we were like, we should probably have this conversation on LinkedIn Live because there's so much to explore. So Prerika, before we get started in the conversation today, can you give us a little bit of an idea of who you are and why women in leadership is a conversation that you love to have?
Absolutely. So, Tracy, thank you so much for having me. I'm Prerika, and this is a topic that's really close to my heart. So, I've spent, the last 18 years of my career working for Fortune 500 companies, working for consulting companies. And in my last few roles, I was actually a woman who was in a leadership position, in a leadership role. I had a lot of women coming to me and wanting mentorship, people that were on my team or that I was working with. And then 3 years ago, I decided to make it my life's mission and purpose. And so I have a coaching company, Inspiration Careers, that is dedicated to helping women get to leadership roles, stay in them, and really develop the kind of life that they really want. Right. So this is something that is so close to my heart because I live and breathe in it every single day.
So Prerika, one of the places I'd love to start is because I'm sure in your experience and also in the conversation that you have with your clients, there's some big central themes in terms of the challenges that people experience as women in leadership. So, what are some of those places or some of those challenges that a lot of people that you've talked to are experiencing?
Yeah. So there's two main challenges that I've seen, right? One is women that are just stepping into a newer leadership role. And so it might be thinking about a promotion or it might be thinking about getting a new job that is a level up. And it is all that kind of fear and that thought of, am I ready for this? Am I going to be any good at this? Do I have what it takes? And that sort of mindset coming in. And there's so many different factors that go into that, right? It's our social conditioning, it's society, it's the way that job descriptions are written. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. And then the second challenge that I see a lot with women is once they're in the leadership roles, how do they navigate that? Because typically, if we're being very clear and transparent, there's fewer and fewer women as you move up, especially if you're talking about corporate and even in entrepreneurship, you don't see that many women at the director plus level. And then if you look at it by industry, that varies so much as well, especially if you look at things like technology and consulting, you just don't see a lot of women. And so your peers are different than you. And sometimes your teams are also different than you. And how do you manage that? And how do you maintain your, decorum? And how do you maintain all of those things and become a powerful leader when you're navigating those challenges?
So one of the things I'm thinking about this from my own journey's perspective is I at one point was given the opportunity to lead. And I will forever be the biggest fan of my manager, who wasn't a man. Well, he is a man, but he was my manager, who gave me the opportunity to really explore that in a very safe way. I got this opportunity, like a mini internal contract, that I think you would be a great team lead. So how about we try this out for 6 months? And if you like it, you can keep it. And if you don't like it, you can go back to your account manager job. And so I was like, oh, this is really great because there's almost no risk, right? I think this would be fun. Try it. And like from then on, I was just like, oh my gosh, I love the challenge that is people, right? Figuring out what makes them tick, what makes them productive, what makes them happy, what makes them frustrated. And that was something that I just fell in love with as a leader. And so in this arena of the people who are like getting their first opportunity to lead, one of the things that I know for me going into was like, I didn't have confidence at that time that I could lead. So what are some of the things that you've seen work for you or seen work for others coming into a role where you maybe don't have the confidence today? But how do we start to build up that confidence to be the leader we dream of being?
Yes, I love this question. And this is actually the bulk of the work that I do with my clients, as you know, Tracy. So I love talking about this. So the first thing that I like to do is in any role, whether you've stepped into the leadership role or you're just thinking about it, is looking at the similarities. Because what happens is our brain will suddenly start telling us, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do anything in this role. Like, I don't know any of this. This is all brand new because it seems too big and scary, right? And so I like to take a look at this role and think about what are all the things that I have already? What are the skills? What are the talents? What are the experiences that I have that I can already bring to the table that are going to make me such a strong candidate, that are going to make me such a good leader, right? And having evidence for those, because our brain loves evidence, right? And so sometimes when we're just thinking about things, it's not good enough. So write it down. Make a list of all of the things, all the experiences, and I promise you it's going to be a pretty, long list. That's one thing. The second thing is, in this case, if it's already happening, you have to kind of backtrack a little bit and think about all of that. But I advise all my clients to have a running list of your success stories, right? So every week, every 2 weeks, write down things that you've done well, that you're celebrating, because that is going to contribute to evidence and that's going to help you feel really, really confident. Right. And then the last piece I would say is part of confidence is knowing what you're good at and what you're not good at, and really acknowledging that you cannot know 100% and nobody does. Right. And so for the things that you're feeling uncertain about, make a plan for what you will do. Right. Is it learning by experience? Is there maybe like a course or something like that you need to take to skill up? Is it something that you can kind of up level by doing on the job? So just think about how you're going to fill that gap.
I think that's really important because you said something really important there, Prerika, which is like, we're never going to be good at all things, right? There's things we're good at and there's things we're not good at. And the point isn't for us to be good at everything. That's why we have teams. But knowing what your skills are, but also knowing the benefit of like up leveling your skills, like where you kind of beat the pack versus focusing so hard on the weaknesses and trying to fill that gap. There's a balance there. And I've found for me that a lot of my confidence has come from focusing on up leveling where I have strength and not focusing so much on where I have weaknesses, because I can't have no weaknesses, right? That's just like one of the things. My background is marketing, and I'm not colorblind, but the way my brain processes information has almost nothing to do with color, right? So people would be like, oh, this button should be blue or this button should be green. And I'm like, I don't care what color the button is, as long as there's a button on the website that says call us. Like, I don't, my brain just doesn't think that way. And so I remember at one point my boss recommending to me that I took some like graphic design training. And I was just like, I do not think that that is the best thing for me to spend my time doing, because I just don't care enough about it to get good at it. Right. So it would make more sense for us to hire a marketing associate who sees things like that, who loves things like that, who has fun doing those things, and let them do that instead of me trying to fill that gap, because I'm never going to be good at filling that gap. Let's fill that gap with somebody who's awesome at that. And so as leaders, when we have, I guess, really the vulnerability, shall I say, to say like, this is just not like that category of things, not for me. I see the value. Let's fill that value gap with another person who loves to do that, but I'm not going to be that person. And being able to like have confidence in being able to say, I'm not that person. Is that like, I would just love to hear from your perspective too, maybe even just your personal perspective on this one, Prerika, is like, is that something that you've noticed for yourself as well?
Yeah, I think this is such a good call out. And there is a book and also like a tool, if you will, called Strengths Finder that I've done in the past. And that is exactly the focus. What you just shared, Tracy, is, sometimes you're going to know that there's things that are gaps for you that you're not going to be able to fill, or it's not productive to, right? Just like what you said, as you move up through the ranks, as you do move into a leadership role, you know that there's things that there's no time to waste on trying to up level. And so you want to focus on your skill set. So yes, I absolutely agree. And also thinking about who else can fill the gap, right? And that's something that just comes by experience, where you're going to think about and say, can I learn this thing that's new and different? And is that effective versus like, something that you've been working on, it's just not getting there. And you're like, I'm going to focus on my strength. So yes, I think part of leadership is also knowing yourself and knowing when to let something go, because there's only so much work you can do. And, it's diminishing returns at that point. So totally agree with that. And I think that's a good call out.
Yeah. It just makes me think too. I had this like, I've project managed a lot of things, and I was presented with a project management opportunity, and I was like, okay, let's see. I'll go for the interview, see what they say. And like, one of the biggest things for me that drives me nuts is processes that don't work, and we just do them because someone wrote it in a book at one point. And I was like, if what I care about is the most effective process. So if I realize that a process that we're using is ineffective and not accomplishing what it needs to accomplish, I will be inclined to fix the process. And it will actually distract my brain to the point where I can't follow the process because I know how bad it is. I would rather spend my time, effort, and energy fixing the process so we don't waste time, effort, and energy forever. I remember saying that in this project management interview, and they were like, oh, no, we just need somebody who's going to just follow the process. And I was like, well, I am not that person. So we can move on. You guys can move on. Keep looking for another candidate, because I'm not that person. And I felt really good about saying that, because I knew how painful it would be for me to be in that scenario. And not only for me to be in that scenario, but to watch other people be in that scenario. And that's the leadership part of me. I don't like wasting people's time. And if you are okay wasting people's time, then we're not aligned in what we're trying to do here.
Absolutely. And I think for those listening, if you are in the interview process and you're looking to step up into your leadership, just like Tracy pointed out, be transparent and be honest with yourself, with the team that you're recruiting with, because that's going to serve you so well in the future, in the long term, right? Short term, sure, you might try to impress them, it might work out, but in the long term, it's actually taking you away from your goals. So part of your leadership and stepping into that is knowing what you're good at and really being able to portray that and share that in a way that helps other people know what you're good at and what type of roles you're going to be good at. Mm-hmm. So that's such a great example.
Absolutely.
I wanted to come back to actually this story that you shared in the beginning, right? When you were offered this leadership role to step into a team lead. And I know you were focusing also like on, what kind of up leveling you needed to do, if you did, if you didn't, that sort of thing. But I also wanted to point this out to the people that are listening is this is such a good example of organizations also taking responsibility for what leadership looks like in the process, right? So we talk a lot about the challenges that women have as individuals, but I do feel that there's responsibility on both sides as an individual, and then organizations also have a responsibility to say, how can I help my people? And we're talking about women, so how can I help women have a seat at the table, and what could that path look like for them, and how do I make it comfortable for them so they feel good about stepping up, right? Because that's another challenge that a lot of women in leadership have, is that they don't know if they have the time, if they can make it work. They don't know what they have to give up in their personal life. And so allowing this type of model of, okay, we're going to trial it out for 6 months, see what that looks like. And so you're not pushing people into roles that they're not comfortable with, but you're giving them a really good incentive to try it out.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is one of the things that again, is the puzzle of humans, right? Is what's comfortable for me isn't necessarily what's comfortable for Prerika, or what's comfortable for Balwinder or Glenda or John or Melissa, right? Like, it's leadership has to do with somebody I was on a conversation with the other day kept using the word curiosity, right? And I was like, yes, I feel like curiosity is such an important skill in leadership in general, because we need to be curious about the things we don't understand, right? My experience is my experience, and this might have worked out well for me. And quite honestly, I've used the same strategy with other employees of mine, and it has been effective, right? The whole like, I think you would love this based on what you're telling me about where you want your career trajectory to go. I think this might be somewhere you want, like, will help you get there. Let's try it. Let's try it for 6 months and see how it goes. And if it goes awesome, there you go. You got the job, right? If it doesn't go awesome, we'll explore something else. But I think when it comes to especially like bigger organizations, right, we start to get protocol, we start to get processes, and people are like, we got to stay aligned with this. And I think there's always room as a human to just explore that more, right? Like, is there a way where I can stay in line with this process and also give people the opportunity for a safe foray into something else? How can I follow the process and be a champion for other people's ideas and thoughts and things like that? I think just being able to even have time, right? Like, Perker, one of the things you mentioned was that, like, are we going to have time to do this? I think it's important as a leader to make time to have that curiosity, to try and puzzle together things that other people aren't puzzling together because they're too busy doing tasks.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think these are all good points, and those are challenges that each organization will have to figure out. But I think even at a larger scale, there's certain things that companies can do that they know that they've had success with in the past that are scalable, right? And so, for example, being really clear with job description. So this is something that I did in my last corporate job that I worked with. Was really looking at job descriptions, and are they an accurate representation of what the role looks like, or is this just a wish list from a leader? And creating that appeal, because if somebody is wanting to step into a leadership role, like whether you are there already at that company or you're applying from the outside, how do you make it appealing for somebody? And are you using language where looking for a rock star who has lots of flexibility in their schedule, like that sort of language, where that for a lot of women, that's not going to be appealing for them. And so you're not even going to have women apply or be a part of that, especially when you know as a company that you have a flexible working policy and that may not be the case. Right. So I think that there's just certain things that companies can do to really cut out those type of, that type of language and really be clear that they are attracting the right women and the right set of people, and making sure that that diversity is also a part of the conversation, right? And then there's also the kind of benefits that you offer. So this is another topic that I've been talking about, is what are the kinds of things that you can offer as a company that would be helpful to women in leadership in particular, right? And so some of those offerings are going to be things like executive coaching. So from your corporation or organization, offering one-on-one coaching that is specific to women, that's going to help them manage all of these things. Because like you and I said in the beginning of the call, you can't do it all alone. You don't know everything. And wouldn't it be great to have somebody that's in your corner that's able to support you and specializes in this, right? So that's something to offer. Also doing things like women's roundtables or fireside chats as an organization that really highlight and talk about unique challenges that women or any certain group of people may have, by including those people and having women that are already in leadership at that company, at that organization, share their experiences and how they're navigating, right? So there's those type of things happening. Also thinking about, any sort of particular healthcare benefits that would be attractive to women, also thinking about, there's women returning to work programs. So specifically designed to attract women that may have left the workforce because they have had children, or, they've spent time balancing family or whatever that looks like. And so especially in our European offices, we have launched these programs to attract women so that they felt safe and heard and seen, and they felt like they could come into these environments and they could be successful. So I think these are all the things that we can look at.
Yeah, I think that's really important to just call that out, is, are these things being inclusive? Like, are we being inclusive with our language? Are we being inclusive with our benefits? And I think if people ask themselves those questions, theoretically, it's not a difficult question, but there's a lot of guilt that can come with looking at it and being like, wow, the way that we have worded our job descriptions is totally focused at like young males or something like that, right? And you're like, wow, I really need to fix that. You should come and talk to Prerika because she can totally help. Okay, I do want to go back, Prerika, because when you were mentioning your original 3, you were talking about success stories. And I really want to just talk for a minute about the concept of societal success versus personal success, and being able to look at your success stories on I think a lot of times when people think of success stories, they think of a resume, right? Like, what would people want to see on a resume to say that I have accomplished this, right? Versus your own personal success, a thing that you would look at personally as a success story. So can you talk to us a little bit about how to frame that success story exercise so that we can make sure we're really, the way that we get to stand out in our success is by it looking like our personal brand, right? Like, this is personal success for me. These are the things I find important. These are the things I value, versus here's the default societal norm for what success looks like. So just talk to us a little bit about what that exercise looks like, so both of those things are considered.
Yeah. Yes. So yes, they can be very, very different things. And sometimes clients do have a hard time with this exercise because, yes, judging by societal norms, maybe they don't have a success story, quote unquote, for that week, right? And so that's why I urge you to come up with a list of, depending on who it is, 5 things. You have to write down 5 things. And if you look into your every single day, you will find those 5 things, right? And so I like to start off with professional accomplishments because I find that that's a good place to start if we're talking about women in leadership. And it could be anything, literally anything that, you got through 15 of your emails in your inbox, right? You were able to get this part of your schedule cleared. You were able to get this deliverable out. You were able to have X amount of meetings, whatever that looks like. Anything that you've done or completed, you want to have that on there because there's two reasons. One is it gets you in the habit of recognizing all the things that you're doing right. And the second thing is, as you start listing down those things that maybe seem small or bite size, it's going to start the flow of you thinking about so many other things. And then you'll say, wait a second, actually, I got that internal team award. Or wait a second, actually, I was asked to speak at so and so event. And it will lead you to thinking about things that we often think are like larger pieces of success, right? The second area that I like to look at is looking at your personal life as well, right? And so if you had it, as a goal to go to the gym 3 times a week and you went, that is a success, right? If you said that you were going to eat, X, Y, and this amount of vegetables this week and you hit that goal, that is going to be a success, right? If you said that you were going to make it a goal for yourself to talk to this many friends or do have this many night out and that happened, you want to have that as a success. So literally look to every piece of your life, relationship, personal, professional, to see where you're really thriving and you're liking it and there's things that you feel good about. And so when I'm talking about success stories, that's what it is for me. And I can tell you personally, there's been weeks that as part of, what I wrote down on my list, it's been getting out of bed. Because I can tell you with COVID and, I saw your face light up, like there's a lot. There's a lot going on. At one point I was working a corporate job, I was running a business. COVID was happening. I have a family member that, has health issues. And so just dealing with all of that, for me, sometimes writing, getting out of bed was a big accomplishment.
And I think that this is why I like to just break it down from like, because society might not say that getting out of bed today was a success. But if you feel like it's a success, then that's something that is successful. And there's on those days where you feel like success is getting out of bed, because that won't be every day, right? You'll like some days you'll just get out of bed and you won't even think of it as a success because there's other things that fill that gap. Some days it is because of what you have overcome, right? Like the act of getting out of bed is you overcoming something, right? Overcoming things that are like keeping you down, keeping you on your back. Not all of us sleep on our back, but you get the point. That's an accomplishment because it feels like an accomplishment for you. And that is what I really wanted to focus on. I do this networking event once a month called BYOB, which is Bring Your Own Brand. And the whole point of the event is to celebrate something about your personal brand. What are you celebrating about your personal brand today? And sometimes people have big wins, right? I have had people who are in the chat right now who come and are like, I just got a job offer, right? Like that awesome win. Sometimes it's that I came to this event today because I really didn't want to, right? That can be a win. It can be that you wrote that social media post you've been super afraid of writing for whatever. It could be that you used your voice for the first time in a meeting and were super scared the whole time you were doing it, right? Like these are the things where we showed up as us. And I think it's so important to start celebrating those and seeing those things as success, because if we're constantly measuring ourselves off of society standards of success is getting a job offer, getting a promotion, buying a car, buying a house, right? Like all these things society has dictated is success for us. We lose, like none of those things are dependent on who we are. And when we filter out all of the who we are wins for societal wins, we get distracted from who we are. And who we are is what allows us to be the leader that we get to be.
Absolutely. I love, first of all, if you haven't been to one of those events, I highly recommend them. I think it's so great to be able to share in a group, right? One thing is you write something out for yourself, but then you've also got this feeling of success and feeling good by sharing in a group. And I think that's so important.
Yeah. Next one's coming up third week of July, friends who are watching this live. So if you want to make sure you get the invite, chat me and I'll make sure you get it. Okay, I want to come back quickly to John's question about, as I grow my DEI education, how do we adjust a job description to be inclusive? So whether or not we're talking specifically about a job description, Prerika, what are some of the things from a women in leadership perspective? What are some of the adjustments we can start to make in our language that can help promote? I mean, you talked about some of the benefits and everything, but I'd love to know specifically in terms of language. What are the types of things that you have seen that have been successfully more inclusive when it comes to women in leadership?
Sure. So the first thing I would say, even before we like to take action, is the first step would be figuring out from the job description what your statistics are, right? So how many men are applying, how many women. Sometimes we're able to do that, sometimes we're not. But you should have an idea of that based on the pipeline so that you can adjust, right? So let's start there. Is first, if you can measure, and I know, especially depending on what country you're in, it really varies, but figure that information out. The second thing is, in terms of inclusion, going back to what I was saying earlier, really check for, is this language, if somebody was reading this job description, does it sound like something that you would be doing 24/7 and there's no breaks and no support? So for example, sometimes things seem innocent and you say, looking for somebody who's bold, who's going to work independently, doesn't need direction, always available, flexible. This is a get it done kind of role. Really think about, is that something that the job actually needs? Is that something you really need for your role? Or is it just language that's going to narrow down your pipeline and not be inclusive? Right? And so on the other side of things, if you think about inclusive language, even things like marketing on your website. Do you have photos of women? Do you have diversity? If I go to your leadership team, for example, what does your leadership team look like? Because as a woman in leadership, those are the things that I look for. I'm going to go to your leadership page and see what's going on. Any thought leadership that you have, are you featuring women there? When you talk about career path, sometimes you see in bigger organizations, they'll highlight one particular person's career path or a few. Is it representative? Does it show people who have families, or is it just single people who are younger? What does that all look like? Then in the job description, again, are you talking about programs that you have that highlight diversity, right? Your inclusion networks, your different, we have this kind of coaching available for women. We have this, we have maybe on, these kind of benefits. Are you sharing that? So I think that's really what you want to highlight in those job descriptions.
Yeah, and I think one of the most important things too, and John, I'm sure we've talked about this, but again, from the human experience perspective, it's so important to look at your intentions versus the impact, right? So Prerika mentioned looking at the data. Okay, well, this is how we used to write our job descriptions before. This is how we're writing our job descriptions now. Are we getting more female applicants? Are we getting a more diverse portfolio of applicants? And it's so funny because this isn't specifically the conversation we've had today, but one of the companies that I worked for, like we never ever got any Black applicants. We just didn't, right? The whole company was white. And nobody explored why we weren't getting any diverse candidates, right? Like the company I worked for was mostly women. And so we would get female white candidates. That's who we would get. And so we hired female white candidates because that was our candidate pool. And then we would be like, well, this is our candidate pool, so that's what we hire from. And they're like, but have we really explored why? Have we tried something different to attract different people? No, we haven't. And there's so much, I think we're going to start calling it corporate ego. There's so much corporate ego in that, like, this is the way we do it, and this is the result, and we just have to go with that. Well, we don't ever have to do that, right? We have the power as individuals to question that. And when we look at it from a leadership perspective, and I'll be honest with you guys, and most of you guys know my story, right? Like, I left corporate because I fought every day. I would come and I would fight for representation, and they weren't interested. The company I was working for wasn't interested, right? And that's why I quit, because I was like, I can only fight this battle for so long, knowing that it's a losing battle. And it's not a losing battle everywhere, but my leadership was wasted there because the things I wanted to stand for, the things I believed in, wasn't the areas where I got to lead. And so I started my own business. There's other organizations. Being an entrepreneur isn't for everybody either. But there's that, again, that kind of ties back to the ownership of your unique leadership. This is the type of leader I want to be. And can I be this type of leader here? If not, that doesn't mean you can't be that type of leader. It just means you can't be that type of leader there. And getting in conversations with people like Prerika, like myself, in order to find what is the leader you want to be? Who are you as a leader? And being able to bring that to life instead of trying to squish yourself into some kind of corporate leadership box, because that's what your current organization dictates. Not a sustainable activity, right? Like, always going to work and stuffing ourselves in a box. It's not, people leave at the end of the day. So don't set yourself up for that. Give yourself the space and the time, the opportunity to explore who you are as a leader, how you bring what you want to bring to the world, and then go out and do that. Need the clarity first in order to get out there and do it. Just as always, I feel like we've opened a very big can of worms on one of these episodes. And if you guys are interested, as I just said, in having more of these types of conversations, connect with me, connect with Prerika. This is our jam, talking about women in leadership, people in leadership, diversity and inclusion, all of these amazing things. So Prerika, if people want to get in touch with you or learn more about what you do, what is the best way for them to do that?
Yes, the best way is to connect with me here on LinkedIn. So I'm at Prerika Agarwal. And from there, you can send me a message and we can have a chat.
Awesome. You know, I love me some LinkedIn networking. So let's get connected, you guys. And again, if you guys are interested in that BYOB, bring your own brand networking event, let me know. I'll make sure you get an invite to that. There's always one every month. So you can start to practice showing up, sharing those success stories that mean something to you and not just things that mean things to society at large. All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining us in the chat today. Prerika, thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge and insight with us today. I hope you guys all connect with Prerika and keep supporting her and following her in all of her women in leadership thingamabobs. That's the best word I can come up with right now. It is not a good word. I apologize. This is what happens when I just ad-lib thingamabobs comes out. But I really hope, as with every conversation, that if this is a conversation that is important to you, that you stay in the conversation. You don't let it be a one-off, because we don't grow to where we want to grow having one conversation. We grow to where we want to go by having many conversations. So if this is the conversation that matters to you, please stay in the conversation. Don't give up on it. There's so much more to explore. And with that, you guys, I hope everybody has a lovely rest of their Friday. And until next time, permission to do you.